What if the reason clarity feels so rare isn't because you don't know enough, but because you're surrounded by too many options? Not bad options, not confusing ones, just too many. You might notice it when you're trying to make a simple choice: what to watch, what to read, what to work on, what to commit to. Everything looks acceptable. Nothing feels clearly right. So you keep looking. You compare. You scroll. You reconsider. And instead of becoming more certain, you feel less sure than when you started. That's not indecisiveness. That's choice overload. The mind doesn't struggle because it can't choose. It struggles because it doesn't know when choosing is done. In environments with limited options, clarity emerges naturally. You see what's available, you choose, you move on. But modern life rarely offers an endpoint. There is always another option just outside your view, another alternative, another version that might be slightly better. So the mind stays in comparison mode, not because it enjoys it, but because it hasn't been given permission to stop. Choice overload doesn't feel chaotic. It feels suspended, like standing in front of too many doors, all slightly open, none clearly marked. The problem isn't that none of them work. The problem is that choosing one feels like losing the others. Every choice now carries a shadow. What if the other option was better? What if I regret this? What if I haven't looked enough yet? Those questions don't come from doubt. They come from excess. When options multiply, commitment becomes heavier, not because commitment is wrong, but because it feels premature. How can you commit when you haven't seen everything? So you delay, you keep browsing, you keep comparing, and clarity never arrives. The mind mistakes more information for more certainty. But information doesn't create clarity on its own. It creates comparison. And comparison has no natural stopping point. There is always one more variable to consider, one more angle, one more opinion. So instead of reaching understanding, the mind stays active, busy, alert, tired. This is why choice overload feels exhausting even when no real decision has been made. Because the work is happening internally. The mind is constantly weighing, ranking, simulating outcomes. What if this? What if that? None of those questions get resolved. They just stack. And stacks don't feel like progress. They feel like pressure. Choice overload also changes how satisfaction works. When you finally choose something, the choice doesn't settle. You keep measuring it against the alternatives you didn't pick. Did I choose the right one? Should I switch? Is there something better? So even after the decision, the loop stays open. Clarity never fully lands. This is why having many options doesn't feel freeing. It feels demanding. Each option asks for attention. Each one wants to be considered. And attention is finite. The mind can't hold infinite comparisons without cost. So clarity becomes rare, not because you're confused, but because the system you're operating in never signals enough. In older environments, options ended. You reached the end of the list. You saw what there was to see. Modern environments are designed differently. Feeds don't end. Recommendations continue. Alternatives regenerate. The system benefits from keeping you looking, but the mind pays the price. Because without an endpoint, the mind doesn't know when to stop evaluating. So it stays open, restless, waiting for a clarity that never arrives. This also explains why simplicity can feel relieving, not because simple choices are better, but because they close. They give the mind an end, a moment where comparison stops and attention can rest. Choice overload isn't about having bad judgment. It's about being placed in environments where stopping feels irresponsible, where not checking all options feels like a mistake. So the mind keeps searching, and searching feels productive, but it isn't restful. Eventually, everything starts to feel equally unappealing, not because nothing is good, but because the mind is tired of comparing. This is when people say they feel stuck, not because they can't move, but because moving requires choosing one thing and letting the others go. And letting go feels harder when there are too many things to let go of. Choice overload creates a strange paralysis, not from fear, but from excess. The mind isn't asking for the perfect option. It's asking for an ending, a moment where looking stops, where evaluating stops, where something is allowed to be good enough without immediately being compared to something else. Clarity doesn't come from seeing more. It comes from knowing when to stop seeing. So what if too many options make clarity impossible? Not because you're incapable of choosing, but because the environment never tells you that choosing is finished.